was evening, and the teacher spoke again by the water. The wind was still, and every ear waited. The fading sun drew a soft gold across the hills, and the murmuring of the crowd fell to silence, as if even the earth were holding its breath. He stood among them, not with majesty of robe or throne, but with the quiet authority of one who knows the secret names of hearts. The light on the water shimmered like a veil between the seen and the unseen, and his eyes lifted toward the slope where the sheep grazed in the distance. If you're listening in peace tonight, share your city and the hour below. It's good to know who walks this quiet path together. And if you'd like, leave a short prayer in the comments. Someone, somewhere, will see it and pray with you. And he said, there was a shepherd who watched over his flock upon the hills. Each morning he led them out, where the grass bent with dew, and each evening he counted them as they came home, his voice steady, his hands rough with mercy. The people listening could almost see him, a lone figure against the horizon, staff in hand, speaking words of calm to creatures who trusted his tone more than the world's noise. He said, the shepherd knows his sheep, and they know his call. When he walks before them, they follow, for his voice is their road. And as he spoke, something quiet entered the hearts of those who listened, a remembrance of safety, of belonging. Some closed their eyes, and in the stillness between his words, they felt the breath of peace draw near. The teacher's words lingered like incense over the gathering. The hills themselves seemed to lean closer. Even the sea's rhythm slowed, its tide a heartbeat answering his own. A boy at the edge of the crowd leaned against his mother's knee, whispering, will he tell another story? And she hushed him softly, for she too wished to hear more. The teacher turned his gaze toward the horizon, where shadows of the flock drifted like white clouds among stone and thorn. He spoke again, but this time more quietly, as though speaking to the soul instead of the ear. There are some, he said, who wander far from the fold, chasing wind through the wilderness. Yet the shepherd's heart cannot forget them. At that, the air grew still once more. It was not a stillness of emptiness, but of waiting, as though creation itself leaned forward for what would follow. His voice fell like rain upon dry ground, gentle and sure. He will leave the 99, he said, and go after the one which is lost until he finds it. The people did not yet speak. They felt the weight of those words, as though the evening itself bowed beneath their meaning. And somewhere, deep within each listener, there stirred the faint recognition of having once been that lost one, the one carried home upon unseen shoulders, found before it could find itself. As the twilight deepened, the first stars appeared, small witnesses over the teacher's brow. The crowd did not move. Their hearts lingered between earth and heaven, between what was heard and what was felt. The parable had only begun, yet already it had entered them like seed falling into ready soil. The teacher's face caught the dimming light, and his eyes shone with the quietness of one who knows both loss and finding. A shepherd's love had begun its telling, and the story would not rest until every wandering heart was gathered into peace. The evening air grew cooler, and still he stood. The hills beyond the water faded into blue shadow, and from the far pastures came the faint cry of a lamb. The sound folded perfectly into his teaching, as if heaven itself had chosen the hour to speak. He did not explain further, for truth needs no adornment. He only let the silence carry the meaning deeper, where words cannot reach. Around him, the listeners sat, as though under the cover of a single great peace. When the last echo of the lamb's cry vanished into the dusk, the teacher lowered his eyes and whispered, "He shall find it and rejoice." And then he was silent again, letting the promise rest upon them like dew on grass. So began the telling of a shepherd, of a sheep, of love that cannot let go. And though the night would soon cover the hills, the light of that story began to rise within every soul that heard. When the crowd had quieted, he spoke to them again. The stars had grown bright above the hills, and the air was cool and still. The teacher's voice carried softly over the listening fields, and the people leaned close, as if each word might guide them home. He said, "The shepherd knows his flock. He calls each one by name, and they come to him, for his voice is life to them." And the words moved like wind through the olive trees, gentle, steady, and sure. The people could see it in their minds, the shepherd walking ahead, his voice weaving a path through the dim valleys, the flock following without fear. Each name he speaks is not a sound alone, but a promise that they are seen, that they belong. For the shepherd is not hired for gain, nor bound by duty alone. His care is the care of one whose heart beats with the lives he tends. He rises early, while the sky is gray, and walks before them, finding safe paths through rock and thorn. As the teacher spoke, the image deepened. One could almost hear the shepherd's voice, low and tender, rolling across the slope, like a song too ancient for the world to forget. It was not a call of command, but of love. Not a shout of power, but the steady rhythm of belonging. When the sheep hear it, they lift their heads, ears turning toward the sound, and follow. The teacher's eyes lingered on those who listened. "Another may call," he said, "but they will not follow, for they do not know that voice. They will flee, for the voice of the stranger carries no peace." And the people nodded, for they understood. They too had known strange voices, words that promised rest yet gave no comfort, paths that looked smooth but led to sorrow. The shepherd's voice, the teacher said, does not deceive. It does not press or demand. It leads. The sheep know it as a child knows its mother's breath in the dark. In his tone is both strength and gentleness, a surety that the wilderness cannot undo. Even when they wander far, some faint echo of that voice follows them through the distance, calling them home. He paused then, and in the silence, the faint bleating of sheep could be heard from the upper pasture. The sound was thin, lonely, but within it was trust. The small, trembling faith of creatures who believe they will be found. The teacher's gaze followed the sound, and he said quietly, "So does the Father call each of you. So does his mercy know your name." The people bowed their heads. Some wept softly, not from sorrow, but from the strange joy of being remembered. The fishermen who stood near the water felt their nets grow lighter. The mothers in the crowd held their children closer. A few shepherds, standing at the back, nodded with slow understanding, for they knew this love, though they had never named it so. In that moment, the teacher seemed to carry all their names within him. Each thought, each struggle, each fragile hope. His words gathered them as the shepherd gathers the scattered flock, drawing them beneath the shelter of one care. The evening itself seemed to breathe with that same peace, as though the very stars bent to listen. He continued, "The shepherd enters by the gate. The watchman opens for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He leads them out, and when he has brought out all his own, he goes before them." And so, the parable unfolded, not a story alone, but as revelation. The people began to see that the shepherd's voice is not bound by pasture or time. It echoes through every heart that longs to return. The call of God is no mere sound. It is the remembering of love that never forgets. The teacher's words settled like light upon the water, and their reflection trembled gently with the breeze. He spoke of care so constant that even silence cannot hide from it. He spoke of knowing so deep that even the wandering belong within it. Then he looked upon the faces before him, the weary, the searching, the faithful, and the lost alike, and said, I am the door of the sheep. If any enter by me, they shall be safe, and shall go in and out, and find pasture. His voice did not rise or fall. It flowed like the steady stream of truth itself. Those who heard felt as though a gate had opened inside them, a threshold from fear into rest. The night deepened. Torches flickered along the edges of the crowd. Somewhere an infant cried and was hushed. The teacher did not speak again for a long while. The stillness after his words was its own sermon, one that every soul could understand without language. When at last he looked toward the hills again, the sheep had moved higher, small white glimmers under the rising moon. The teacher's eyes softened, and he whispered more to himself than to them. The shepherd loves his own. He will not let one be lost. And the people understood that the story was not only of sheep and shepherds, but of themselves, and of the one who would walk into any darkness to bring them home. The wind stirred once, carrying the scent of grass and earth, and the teacher's robe moved like water around him. The crowd held its breath. The voice that called creation had spoken again, and all creation had listened. The moon had risen, casting silver upon the hillside. The teacher's voice, low and unwavering, carried over the hush. A certain man had 100 sheep, he said, and one of them wandered away. The words drifted like a breath across the valley, and the listeners felt the ache within them. That one could be lost, though so many remained. The shepherd, he said, counts them each night as he brings them home. His hands move through the wool, rough with the day's labor, but gentle with care. One by one he touches them, until his fingers pause. 99 stand near, their breaths soft in the dark, but the last is missing. The stillness around him deepens. The stars above seem farther away. He listens. The sound of crickets hums through the grass, and the sigh of the wind moves faintly across the rocks. No bleating answers his call. He calls again. The same name he has spoken since the lamb's birth, the one only it would know. But silence returns. The teacher's gaze moved among those gathered. And what does he do? He asked. Does he not leave the 99 in the open field and go after the one which is lost until he finds it? No one answered. They knew. Every soul in the crowd, in some secret place, knew the pull of that search, the courage that leaves comfort for love's sake. The shepherd lights his lamp. Its flame trembles against the wind, yet he shields it with his hand and steps out into the wilderness. Behind him, the flock watches, their dark shapes still against the pale grass. The night air is sharp, but he walks on, his heart steady beneath the weight of care. Each step is a prayer, that the lost one still breathes, that it has not fallen too far, that the hills will grant it back. The ground beneath him slopes and breaks. Stones scatter underfoot. Still he presses on, listening for any cry, any whisper that might guide him. The teacher's words moved like that same steady rhythm. Step upon step, love upon love. The shepherd leaves safety for danger, he said. He chooses the wild for the sake of one small, trembling life. And the people felt the cost of such mercy, not soft or easy, but fierce and unrelenting. The shepherd's love is not measured by number, but by the one that is missing. To him, the flock is not whole until all are gathered. He climbs higher now, breath rising in the cold. His lantern casts a circle of faint gold upon the stones, and within that light, he walks like a promise kept in motion. Behind him, the 99 rest in safety, but his thoughts are with the one that wanders, frightened and alone. The teacher's voice softened. So the Father sees, he said. So his heart follows after those who stray. Not in anger, but in longing. Not in judgment, but in love that remembers. And the people bowed their heads, for something within them was being named. Their distance, their silence, their secret need to be sought. They hadn't known that being lost could still mean being loved. The parable did not rush. It moved as the shepherd moved, slow and faithful. In the rhythm of his telling, the crowd felt themselves walking beside that lone figure. Over stones, through shadow, across the wilderness that each carried in the heart. The teacher lifted his hand toward the stars. He will not rest, he said, until he finds it. A hush fell deeper still. The firelight flickered against faces wet with quiet tears. The thought of such pursuit, tireless, endless, stirred both hope and humility. The shepherd walks through the ravines now, his lantern a small sun in the darkness. He listens again. A faint cry, distant but real. His breath quickens, his pace grows sure. The echo of that sound becomes his compass, the pulse of love that leads him forward. And though the parable paused there, its echo lingered in the hearts of those who heard. They saw themselves in that one who strayed, and they saw the light of mercy still coming for them across the distance. The teacher's face turned toward the night, and the reflection of his eyes held both sorrow and joy. Sorrow for the wandering, joy for the certainty of return. He said no more, for the story itself was still unfolding in the minds of his listeners. The hills, now bathed in moonlight, seemed almost to move with the rhythm of his words. Every shadow, every glimmer of starlight whispered of the same truth, that love does not forget, and that no one is too far for its reach. And when the shepherd has counted the 99 and found one missing, he does not linger. He rises, his heart already turned toward the wilderness. The night is cold. The air holds the scent of dust and thorn. Yet he does not wait for dawn, for love cannot rest while one remains alone. He takes his staff, wraps his cloak tight against the wind, and begins his search through the shadowed hills. The teacher's voice softened as he spoke, almost like prayer. The crowd could hear the tread of that journey, the crunch of stones beneath the shepherd's sandals, the sigh of the wind through the ravines. The stars overhead burn clear, but their light cannot warm. Still, he walks on, guided by the memory of a cry, by the hope that somewhere in the distance, life still trembles. The path is not gentle. The slope gives way to broken rock, and the darkness hides the edges of the cliff. The shepherd steadies himself against the staff, his lamp a trembling fire cupped close to his chest. Shadows leap along the stone as he passes. The wilderness seems alive, whispering, testing his courage. Yet he does not falter, for the image of the lost one leads him forward as surely as the flame in his hand. The teacher's words wound slow and deliberate, filling the stillness like light filling a cave. He spoke of the shepherd's heartbeat, the strain of breath, the weight of care that drives him deeper into the dark. He does not curse the one who strayed, he said. He remembers how it wandered, where the thorn first caught its wool, how the scent of the far hills drew it away. He knows the sound of its fear. The people listening could feel that knowing, the tenderness that walks beside love's burden. The shepherd is not lost, though he walks among the lost. He is guided by compassion, the map written upon his soul. Every step is measured by mercy, every moment a vow renewed. The wind rises, the lamp flickers, threatening to die, but he shields it with his palm. The wilderness is vast, but love is patient. His eyes search the horizon, his ears strain for the faintest sound. In that long silence between footsteps, the teacher paused, and the crowd felt the ache of waiting, the ache of every heart that has ever hoped to be found. Then he spoke again, lower now, as though speaking to the dark itself. And when he finds no trace, he calls into the night. The words echo across the hillside, a call that bears both sorrow and promise. The shepherd's voice, steady yet weary, rolls through the canyons. The sound carries far, beyond sight, beyond certainty, a thread of faith unbroken by silence. No answer. The night returns to stillness, yet the shepherd calls again and again, until his voice is hoarse and his strength spent. Love cannot forget, even when there is no reply. The teacher's eyes lifted toward the moon, and his words shimmered like its light upon the water. And the Father, he said, walks even so, through shadow, through distance, through the silence of hearts, calling still. The people lowered their heads. Some felt the sting of tears they could not name. It was as though the shepherd's call had reached through the story into their own hidden wilderness. Each person felt, in that quiet moment, that they were the one being sought. The teacher went on. The shepherd's lamp may tremble, but it does not fail. He presses through thorn and stone, and though his feet bleed, his heart rejoices at every sound that is not his own, for every cry might be the one he seeks. And the people could almost see him there, the lone figure moving among the rocks, his cloak torn by bramble, his hands scarred by care. Yet his eyes remain bright with hope, for love endures beyond weariness. He climbs higher. He listens again. Far off, so faint it could be mistaken for the wind, comes the bleat of a lamb. The shepherd stops. He knows that voice, that fragile sound that once answered his own. The night seems to still around him. Even the stars hold their breath. He turns toward the echo, lifting his lamp high, and begins to run. The teacher's voice grew tender. So the shepherd of souls runs toward the cry of his beloved, he said. For the joy set before him is the finding, and the weight of the lost one will be his peace. The people breathed as one, hearts bound by the image. The darkness of their own wandering seemed less fearful, for within it now burned the small, steadfast light of pursuit. The shepherd's search was not a story of another. It was their own salvation told in quiet fire. And as the teacher's words faded into silence, the listeners sat as if upon holy ground. The stars above flickered like lamps along a path unseen, and somewhere in the far distance, they could almost hear it. The faint cry that begins the finding. The cry comes again, thin, trembling, half broken by wind. The shepherd stops, every breath caught still within him. He knows that sound, faint as it is. It is the voice of the one who has wandered too far, the sound of fear calling through the wilderness for what it cannot see. He raises his lamp, and its glow shivers across the rocks. Shadows leap and stretch. Thorn bushes tremble as the wind sighs through them. He listens once more. There it is, closer now, a cry of weariness and pain. The shepherd's heart surges. His pace quickens, and he climbs toward the sound, calling gently, "Be still, little one. I am coming." The teacher's voice lingered in that word, coming, as though the promise itself walked beside the story. The people leaned in, for the moment carried the weight of mercy in motion. The shepherd does not think of his comfort, nor of the 99 safe behind him. He knows only that one small life waits alone, frightened among the stones. He climbs higher, the slope steep and unkind. Thorns catch his cloak and tear his skin, but he does not stop. When he slips upon loose gravel, he steadies himself with his staff and presses forward. The cry has faded now, yet he knows the direction of its echo, as one who has memorized every breath of the hills. The night deepens. The air grows cold enough to numb his hands, but the flame in his lamp still burns. He shields it with his body as he bends low, searching the ground. At last, he sees it. A patch of wool caught on a branch, trembling in the wind. He kneels, touches it, and whispers a prayer of thanks. The lost one has passed this way. The teacher's words flowed like water over stone. "And the shepherd follows the trace," he said. "Each mark, each broken reed, each place where the small feet have pressed the dust." His tone carried neither haste nor delay, only the calm inevitability of love. The shepherd moves slower now, for he knows he is near. His heart beats strong and steady. Then, through the hush, he hears it again, the bleating, weak but alive. He turns the corner of a rocky ledge, holding his lamp high, and sees the lost sheep at last. It stands trembling in a hollow between stones, its legs scratched and bleeding, its wool tangled with briar. When the light falls upon it, it turns its head, eyes wide and glassy with fear. It tries to move, but cannot, for the thorns have caught its coat, binding it fast. The shepherd kneels and speaks softly, his voice the same that once led it to pasture. "Peace, little one. It is I." At the sound of his voice, the trembling eases. The sheep's breathing slows, and it gives a faint cry that is no longer of fear but of recognition. The shepherd's eyes glisten in the lamplight as he stretches out his hand. Gently, he parts the thorns, unravels the snare, and frees the wool. His hands are cut, but he does not notice. When at last the lamb is loose, he gathers it to his chest, feeling its heart beat against his own. The teacher paused, and for a moment all was still. Then he said, "And when he has found it, he lays it upon his shoulders, rejoicing." The people felt that word rejoicing like the warmth of dawn after long night. The shepherd smiles, weary but radiant, as he lifts the sheep across his shoulders. The lamplight glows around them, one figure carrying another, both alive, both returning. He speaks to it as he walks. "You were lost, but I have found you. You were afraid, but I am with you." And though the sheep cannot understand his words, it knows the voice, and that is enough. Its eyes close against his neck. Its breath comes steady now, trusting once more in the rhythm of the heart that holds it. The teacher's gaze swept across the crowd. "So does the Father gather his children," he said. "He does not strike them for their wandering, nor turn away for their weakness. He lifts them upon his shoulders, that they may rest upon his strength." The listeners felt the truth settle upon them like dew. Some bowed their heads, others looked to the stars as if they saw for the first time a path home through heaven's fields. The parable had ceased to be a story. It had become the heartbeat of their own longing. The shepherd begins the long walk back. His steps are slow but steady, and his burden is no burden at all. Each time the sheep stirs, he whispers to it, and the wilderness seems to hush around them. The lamplight moves before his feet like a promise fulfilled. When he crests the final hill, the first pale trace of dawn touches the horizon. Behind him lies the shadow of the night. Before him, the fold and the 99 waiting within. He smiles through tears, for the cry that once led him into darkness has become the song that leads him home. The teacher lifted his eyes toward the brightening east. He finds joy greater than rest, he said, for love is complete again. And those who heard knew that this joy was not only the shepherd's, but heaven's itself, for every soul once lost and now found, and the light of morning began to break over the hills. When the shepherd finds the trembling sheep, he does not scold it. The wilderness has already spoken enough of fear. He kneels, and the small creature presses itself against the rock, its breath quick and shallow. The lamp trembles between them, its light soft upon the wool, and in that quiet glow, the shepherd's eyes fill with tears of relief. He reaches out slowly, so as not to startle. His hand, scarred from the thorns, moves with the gentleness of blessing. "Peace," he whispers. "You are safe." The lamb's flanks shudder, then still. The voice it once followed, the one it thought lost forever, has returned. The teacher's voice wove this scene in tones of stillness, as though the world itself leaned close to listen. "When he finds it," he said, "he lays it upon his shoulders, rejoicing." The crowd could almost see it, the shepherd stooping, lifting the lost one high, his arms strong beneath its weight. The little body rests across his shoulders, its head near his neck, hearing again the heartbeat that once led it through fields of green. The teacher's words carried that rhythm, step and breath, step and breath. The sound of love, bearing what couldn't walk on its own. The shepherd does not hurry, though his strength is spent. Each pace is deliberate, steady, sure. The night no longer feels vast or lonely. The lamp's glow now seems to widen, chasing shadows from the path. The people listening could feel the warmth of that finding. They too knew what it meant to be carried, unseen perhaps, yet held all the same. The teacher looked at them gently, and his eyes seemed to hold their hidden stories. "He calls to it as he walks," he said, "not to chide, but to soothe. Words only the sheep would know. For the shepherd's joy is not only that it is found, but that it can rest again." The shepherd hums softly as he goes. The melody is old, perhaps older than the hills themselves. A song of peace, sung through generations of care. The sheep, heavy with weariness, listens. The fear that once filled its chest drains away like water returning to the sea. Beneath the stars, the wilderness that once seemed endless now feels small, almost tender beneath the shepherd's stride. The teacher's voice was quiet, but it seemed to fill the hearts of all who heard. "So it is," he said, "when the Father finds one who has strayed. He lifts them into his mercy and bears them home. The burden becomes the joy. The loss becomes the song." A mother in the crowd pressed her hand to her heart, for she felt her child's name within those words. An old man bowed his head, remembering the long years of his own wandering. The parable was no longer distant. It breathed among them, close as light upon their faces. The shepherd descends the last ridge. The dawn is beginning to stir, a pale gold rim along the horizon. The sheep stirs faintly on his shoulders, and he murmurs, "Rest, little one, The night is gone. His feet find the path with certainty, for love remembers the way home. The teacher lingered in silence, then spoke softly, and heaven rejoices more over one found than over 99 who never strayed. His words were not a rebuke, but a revelation that the joy of God is not measured in number or worthiness, but in recovery. The crowd did not cheer. They breathed, for such joy could not be shouted. It could only be felt, deep and wordless. Some lifted their eyes toward the hills, seeing there the shadow of that shepherd still walking home beneath the breaking sky. And so the story settled upon them like morning. The teacher's eyes were distant now, as though seeing both the shepherd and the sheep, both heaven and earth, at once. His voice fell to a whisper. He rejoices more than he grieved. The wind moved lightly through the grass. The lamp's flame flickered one last time before the rising sun overtook it. In that moment, between shadow and light, every listener knew that the finding was not the end, but the beginning. For once carried, the lost learns again to walk and to follow the voice that never ceased to call. The teacher lifted his gaze to the brightening sky, and in his silence, they heard a promise too deep for words, that there is no distance love will not cross, no night too dark for its search, and no heart too far gone to be found. The shepherd returns by the same path, though now the hills no longer seem so wide. The lamp, faint with use, swings gently at his side. Across his shoulders the sheep rests in peace, its breath slow and steady against his neck. The air is still cool, but the first color of dawn begins to gather over the horizon. A pale rose, the soft hue of mercy remembered. He does not walk swiftly. Love does not hurry its triumph. Each step is deliberate, the rhythm of a heart returning home. The stones that once threatened to wound now gleam faintly in the morning light. Every obstacle, every thorn has become part of the story, the road by which the lost was found. The teacher's voice moved like this walk itself, slow, steady, unbroken. He carries it upon his shoulders, he said, and though the way is long, his strength is renewed by joy. The crowd could see him now in their minds, the solitary figure upon the slope, the sheep draped like a crown of peace across his back. His face, turned toward home, glowed faintly in the dawn. Below, the valley opens. Wide fields, sleeping beneath mist, the fold still distant but waiting. The shepherd hums again, the song of return, and the sound rolls softly over the land. Birds stir in the olive trees. The air fills with the scent of awakening earth. The sheep lifts its head as if recognizing familiar ground. The teacher said, "The shepherd knows the way even when darkness fades into light. For love remembers not only where the lost wandered, but where home begins." And the people listening understood that this return was not just for the sheep, but for the shepherd as well. Love itself finds rest in the act of restoration. The one who carries and the one who is carried arrive together at peace. The path grows smoother. The shepherd's feet find the worn trail that leads down toward the fold. Ahead, faint shapes begin to move. The 99 rising from their rest, hearing his distant call. They bleat softly, answering the voice that has always guided them. He lifts his eyes and calls out once more, a low, steady cry that drifts across the fields. The flock turns toward the sound, their ears pricking, their tails flicking with excitement. They know the tone, not of warning, but of joy. The teacher smiled faintly as he spoke. He calls to them not to count what remains, but to proclaim what was found, for his heart cannot keep silent. The shepherd crosses the final stream, the water cool around his ankles. He pauses there, letting the sheep drink from his cupped hand. The reflection of his lamp flickers in the ripples, then fades as the first sunlight touches the water. The sheep lifts its head and he whispers again, "Home." The teacher's voice fell soft upon the crowd. So he brings back the lost one, and the valley that once echoed with its cry now echoes with praise. As the shepherd climbs the final rise, the gate of the fold stands open. The watchman sees him from afar and calls out with joy. Others gather. Neighbors, fellow shepherds, those who waited through the night, they run to meet him, for word of his search has already spread. He enters, setting the sheep down gently among the flock. The others crowd around, bleating in welcome. The shepherd's laughter mingles with their sound. It is the music of restoration. He lifts his hands toward heaven and says, "Rejoice with me, for I have found that which was lost." The teacher let those words linger, as though heaven itself waited to echo them. The people breathed them in, tasting the joy of divine reunion. And again he said, "There shall be more joy in heaven over one who is found than over 99 who never strayed." The crowd was silent, yet their silence was alive, not empty, but full of awe. It was as if they too had been carried on those shoulders, brought through darkness into the dawn. The parable had done its work. It had gathered them home. The teacher looked over them gently. His voice was no longer story, but benediction. The shepherd's joy is complete. The night is past, and the fold is full again. The sun rose higher then, touching every face with light. And as they watched him, they understood that the story was not finished. For the shepherd still walks, still seeks, still carries. The finding continues wherever love refuses to rest. The hills shone with morning, and the peace of that truth lay over them like light upon still water. The shepherd stands at the gate, the sky pale with dawn. Around him gather his neighbors, drawn by the news that has already begun to move through the valley. They come with wonder and with laughter, for they have heard that the lost one is home again. The air smells of dew and earth. Light spills across the pasture, like oil poured upon calm water. He lifts the sheep from his shoulders and sets it gently among the flock. The other sheep press close, nuzzling, as if they too remember the emptiness of the fold when one was missing. The shepherd smiles, his face lined by weariness, yet radiant with peace. His voice, still soft from the long night, rises in joy. "Rejoice with me, for I have found the one that was lost." The teacher's voice carried the same light, calm, certain, filled with the quiet wonder of mercy fulfilled. And he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me." The words lingered in the morning air, and the people felt the sound of them settle deep within, like bells ringing across unseen hills. The shepherd's friends bring bread and oil. They kindle a small fire by the fold, and its smoke rises straight into the brightening sky. The sheep feed again, their heads bowed to the grass, and the sound of their chewing becomes the rhythm of peace restored. Children run along the fence, laughing. Even the dogs lie quiet at the gate. The shepherd pours a small measure of water into a wooden bowl for the one who was found. The sheep drinks slowly, lifting its head after each swallow to look at him. He strokes its wool, still rough from the thorns, and whispers words no one else can hear. His voice carries the tone of prayer more than speech. The teacher paused then, and when he spoke again, it was almost a song. Likewise, I say unto you, there is joy in heaven over one sinner who repents, more than over 90 and 9 just persons who need no repentance." And as he said it, the listeners felt the weight of the words dissolve into joy. They saw it, not as doctrine, but as dawn. A heaven not cold or distant, but alive with gladness. Whenever love triumphs over loss, somewhere a bird began to sing, a clear note rising through the morning air. The teacher's eyes followed the sound, and for a long moment, he did not speak. The silence between his words was not empty. It was filled with the same rejoicing that filled the fold. The people around him were still. They could feel that heaven's celebration was not a sound of trumpets, but the quiet laughter of peace restored. The lost is found, the journey completed, the heart at rest. This is joy enough to fill eternity. And he said softly, "The shepherd's joy becomes the song of angels. The finding of one is the harmony of all." The crowd began to breathe again, as though awakening from a vision. Some smiled faintly, others wiped tears they had not noticed falling. It seemed that the whole world had grown lighter, that something unseen had been set right. The teacher lowered his eyes, and his words became gentle once more. "So let your hearts rejoice with him," he said, "for none are beyond his seeking, and every soul that returns brings gladness to the fold of heaven." The sun rose higher, spilling gold across the fields. The shepherd, in the story and in their hearts, stood quietly beside his flock. He needed no further praise. The finding itself was enough. The peace of presence restored, and again the teacher's voice drifted like wind through grass. "There is no joy like the return of what was lost, for mercy once given becomes the breath of heaven." The crowd sat long after he fell silent. The sound of the sea beyond the hills murmured softly, and the scent of bread baking from a nearby home reached them. Life continued, yet it felt newly sanctified, as if every ordinary act might now hold a spark of divine rejoicing. When at last the teacher lifted his gaze, his eyes reflected that same light. The story of the shepherd had ended, but not the truth within it. The people felt that the next words he would speak would lead them deeper still, from the joy of the found to the peace of the shepherd himself. And as the morning broadened, the parable became stillness once more. The hills shone quiet and alive beneath the sun, and in every heart remained the echo of that heavenly laughter that begins whenever love finds its own again. When the murmurs of joy had faded, the teacher remained still. The crowd, sensing that his silence was not an ending, but a pause, waited. The morning light spread over the hills, and the warmth of it seemed to breathe through his words even before he spoke. "The heart of the shepherd," he said at last, "is the heart of the Father." His tone was low, woven with reverence. The listeners drew closer, for this was no longer a parable of sheep and fields alone. "He leaves the 99, he said, "not because they are forgotten, but because love cannot rest while one remains in shadow." The people nodded slowly, their faces softened by understanding. They had heard of kings and rulers who guarded their own power, but this shepherd carried a kingdom built of mercy. His strength was gentleness, his rule compassion. The teacher's eyes shone as he spoke of that love, vast, unmeasured, unrelenting. "The shepherd rejoices in every soul brought home," he continued. "So does heaven itself rejoice, not in riches, not in thrones, but in the return of one who once was lost." Around him, the crowd fell silent. Even the birds seemed to hush. as though the earth itself bowed before such truth. Some among them had come only to hear a story. Now they found themselves listening to the very pulse of divine mercy. The teacher's words unfolded like prayer. The heart of mercy, he said, does not measure worth. It seeks not the deserving, but the distant. It bends low to lift what has fallen, and its joy is not complete until all are gathered. A fisherman in the crowd looked down at his hands, rough and calloused, remembering days when he had wandered from hope. Beside him, an old woman clasped her shawl, feeling her own years of loneliness melt in the light of that mercy. Each heard the shepherd's voice, though he spoke no name aloud. The teacher continued, "When the lost one is found, the shepherd does not speak of where it went, nor how it strayed. He speaks only of the finding. So the Father remembers not the distance, but the return. His delight is not in the punishment of the lost, but in the healing of love's wound." Those words rested upon the people like oil upon weary skin. They understood, perhaps for the first time, that repentance was not fear's burden, but love's invitation. To be sought, to be lifted, to be brought home. This was grace itself. The teacher lifted his eyes toward the horizon, where the sun had risen fully. "There are those," he said, "who see the shepherd go after the one and ask, 'Why such trouble for so small a thing?' But they do not understand that love is not content with almost whole. The flock is one body. The missing of one is the wound of all." The crowd breathed, as one, a single hush that seemed to ripple like wind across the grass. The teacher's hand moved gently, tracing in the air the circle of completion. "And when the one returns," he said, "the wound is healed. Heaven is whole again." He paused then, and a stillness deeper than silence filled the space. Some listeners closed their eyes, others clasped their hands before them. It was as if the shepherd himself had walked among them, leaving peace in his wake. And he said, "This is the heart of mercy. It does not rest until the lost are home. It rejoices not in righteousness alone, but in the victory of love over distance. For where mercy abides, joy abides also." The teacher's face was calm, almost radiant. The crowd felt the warmth of his words settle into them, quiet and sure. No shout, no spectacle, only truth, spoken with the tenderness of one who knows both the darkness and the dawn. Then he added softly, "He who has ears, let him hear, for the shepherd still walks, and his voice still calls." And in that moment, the story of the lost sheep and the joy of heaven became one. No longer a tale of then, but a song of now. It moved through them, like light through glass, leaving each heart bright with remembrance. That every cry of return is heard, every wandering answered, every soul known by name. The teacher let the silence close again, not as an ending, but as a rest between heartbeats. The story of mercy had been told, and it would not fade. Its echo would follow them through every valley yet to come. When the rejoicing has quieted and the morning rests upon the fields, the teacher lets his voice become a river. He turns their hearts from the story of the finding to the peace that follows, from the lamp that searched the ravines to the waters that wait for those who are home. And he speaks the psalm that dwells like breath within the faithful. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." The words open a pathway before them, green as spring and sure as the dawn that crowns the hills. He speaks of pasture, and the people feel the earth soften beneath their feet. "He makes me lie down in green pastures," he says, and the image settles over them. the flock resting without fear, bellies filled, eyes half closed in the gentlest trust. The grass is cool and deep. The wind, a blessing that passes without taking. In this rest, there is no counting, no measuring of days or debts, only the shepherd's watch and the quiet consent of those who are safe. Then he says, "He leads me beside still waters." And the scene widens. A stream runs clear along the edge of the meadow, not rushing, not loud, but speaking in the small language of peace. The water carries the color of the sky. It remembers the rain and promises the harvest. Lambs step carefully to its brink and bow to drink. Their reflections ripple and mend. The teacher's voice follows the flow, and the people feel thirst they did not know they carried begin to ease. Here is the shepherd's kindness, the teacher continues, that he does not drive, but leads, not to storm or flood, but to water, made gentle for those who fear. And they remember the night's ravines, the thorn and stone, and marvel that the same care that searched in darkness now prepares a lullaby of light. The shepherd's mercy is not one deed alone. It is a path. It begins at the cry and travels through the finding until it arrives at the quiet where souls learn to breathe again. Here, he says, he restores my soul. The words are not sudden. They come like the shade of a tree at noon, like the first cool breath after toil. Restoration is not a blaze. It is a slow returning, a gathering of scattered strength. The people see the sheep that was carried now resting in the grass, wounds washed, fear unwound. Its sides rise and fall with untroubled breath. The shepherd sits nearby, hands open, eyes soft with joy that needs no witness. The listeners answer with silence, a silence that is worship. Some taste salt upon their lips and realize it is from their own tears. The fishermen think of long waters, of storms stilled by a word. The mothers think of sleeping children and nights when fear has passed like a cloud. Old men remember youthful days when courage came easily. Young ones find that courage streamed into them without asking. The still waters have found each of them by name. The teacher goes on. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. The words do not press, they beckon. The path is not a road of pride. It is a way smoothed by obedience, edged with mercy. The footprints that mark it belong first to the shepherd. He goes before, and the flock follows, not to earn his love, but because they have tasted it. Righteousness here is not a weight, but a way, not a ladder, but a lane through meadow and light forest, where every step is both command and comfort. He lingers by the stream in his telling, and the people linger with him. They hear the small song of water on stone. They feel the cool upon their wrists, as if they too have bent to drink. The shepherd's rod rests beside him. His staff lies across his knees. There is no threat in their shape, only memory. These are the tools that found the stray and guarded the fold. In peace, their very stillness is assurance, and the teacher, as if turning a jewel in the sun, lets the psalm glow from another facet. He restores my soul. He says it again, and again the words do not tire. The restoring touches both the wound and the weary place beneath the wound. It is not only the lifting from the bramble, but the mending afterward, a mending done with time and song, and the harmless lapping of water on the shore of the heart. The people breathe more slowly now. They feel the pace of the story ease as a river widens. And yet, beneath the calm, the teacher plants the quiet strength that will carry them onward. He is not building a garden that ends at its fence. He is preparing a meadow that opens toward a valley. The still waters are not the last word, but they are the word needed before the shadow. Rest precedes courage. Peace equips faith. A swallow dips low over the imagined stream, quick as a blessing. The flock stirs, not in alarm, but in comfort. The gentle rearranging of bodies that know they are guarded. The shepherd stands, and the staff returns to his hand, like an extension of his care. He looks down the path that traces the meadow's edge and disappears into a mild fold of hills. Where it goes, he knows. When they will rise and follow, he knows. For now, he lets them rest. When they rise, he will lead. And in the hearts of those who listen, the words lay foundations. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Not because days hold no labor, nor nights no sigh, but because want is answered by presence. The meadow could vanish, the water could hide beneath stone. Still the shepherd remains, and where he stands, pasture begins. The teacher's eyes hold this truth without struggle. It is as native to him as breath. A child within the crowd leans into his father's side. The father does not move, except to place a steady hand upon the child's hair. This small gesture gathers the whole psalm. The shepherd's care is vast enough for nations and intimate enough for a single trembling soul. It is world and whisper, star and hand. The teacher allows the stream's music to be the closing of his sentence. He does not hasten them away from the waters. He lets the image do the work of healing, like oil sinking into grain, like light becoming part of the stone it touches. Only when the quiet has become part of their breathing does he turn his gaze toward the low places beyond the hills, where the path descends and shadows begin their weaving. And so, the section rests with them, found, fed, and restored, led to the water that does not wound, steadied for the road that continues. The shepherd lifts his staff. The flock will rise soon. The stillness that held them will walk within them. The song of the stream will become memory and strength, a soft echo at the edge of every step yet to be taken. When the water has stilled within them and their hearts have known rest, the shepherd rises. The flock stirs, answering the small movement of his staff. The teacher's voice follows that moment, as a stream follows the bend of a hill. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. The words carry the cadence of steps resumed after stillness, the gentle certainty of a guide who knows the way ahead. The paths wind through meadows at first, where morning light drapes every stone and leaf. The sheep walk easily here. The air smells of grass and promise. Yet the shepherd's eyes, fixed on the distant folds of shadow along the valley rim, know that the straightest way to safety passes through places where light thins. Still, he walks before them, and his gait is calm. The earth bears his memory. The wind carries his voice. The teacher lets the listeners see the trail. It is narrow, not grand. It threads between thorn and wildflower, between rock and moss. The shepherd pauses often, turning his head to count, to listen. Behind him, the flock follows, not from fear, but from trust older than memory. The staff in his hand touches the ground like punctuation, marking every promise kept. The teacher says softly, "He leads for his name's sake, not for pride, not for display, but because goodness is his nature, and faithfulness his way." The people hear in those words a truth that steadies them more than any command, that righteousness is not a burden laid upon them, but a path already trodden by love. They are not asked to carve their own road through wilderness. They are asked to follow where mercy has already gone. The shepherd pauses at a spring that trickles from the rock. He lets the lambs drink. The older sheep wait their turn, eyes half closed. When all have taken what they need, he turns again to the upward path. The teacher's tone moves with that same rhythm. Act, rest, rise, move. Righteousness is lived in steps, not leaps. He restores my soul, the teacher repeats quietly, and leads me. The flock does not see the plan from beginning to end. They see only the shepherd's feet and hear the tone of his voice. Yet that is enough. To walk in righteousness is to keep the sound of his call within the ear and the peace of his promise within the breast. The path bends into places where the sun no longer lies full upon the ground. The people in the crowd feel the light dim in their imagination, but not in fear. They have seen the still waters. They have tasted rest. Now they know that the same shepherd who gave them peace walks before them into the shadow. He leads, the teacher says again, letting the repetition deepen rather than echo. He does not drive. He does not abandon. He goes before. The flock moves single file where the path narrows. The air cools. The stones glisten with morning dew. Somewhere far below, the stream from which they drank murmurs faintly, the memory of peace following them into new terrain. The shepherd's rod glints briefly as he lifts it to clear the way of briar, and the teacher tells them, the rod is not for harm. It is defense, against the wolf, against the pit. The staff is not for punishment. It is for guidance. With one he protects, with the other he draws near. These are his companions, as mercy and truth are his nature. The people in the crowd nod slowly, some closing their eyes. They remember their own narrow ways, their own nights of guidance unseen. The teacher's words unfold gently. To be led in righteousness is to be kept within sight of love, even when the hills rise steep and the air grows dim. As he speaks, the image changes. The meadow recedes, the valley mouth widens. Shadows stretch longer, soft but sure. The teacher's tone grows quiet, weighted with the coming transition. The paths of righteousness lead through shadow also, he says. For righteousness is not escape from the valley, but courage within it. He pauses, letting that sentence stand like a lantern lit in thought. The people feel its warmth, but also its gravity. Some have known loss, some bear sorrow too tender to name. They understand that the road of the shepherd must pass through places where comfort is no longer the grass beneath the foot, but the presence that walks beside. The teacher lifts his eyes toward the darker slope of the imagination. Yet even there, he says, his name endures. Even there, his leading does not fail. The flock moves onward. The shepherd's song changes key. It is lower now, steadier, meant for valleys. It fills the air between the cliffs, turns echo into reassurance. When I walk through the valley of the shadow, the teacher begins, not yet finishing the thought, only letting it rise like a note waiting for resolution. The listeners know that the story of green pasture has become the story of faith's endurance. They sense the deepening ahead, the place where peace is tested and proven. But before that valley is entered, the teacher allows them one more moment in the cool of the morning. A pause to remember that the same hand that led them through light will lead them through dusk. The sun stands higher now above the imagined ridge, casting long beams across the crowd. The teacher lowers his head slightly, as if to bless them with silence before speech resumes. The words of the psalm breathe still among them: pasture, water, path, and name. Everything needed for the valley has already been given, and so the section closes with quiet certainty. The flock follows. The shepherd leads. The path continues, curving downward where shadow waits to test the peace of still waters. Yet there is no fear in the movement, only trust rehearsed in rest. The teacher's voice falls away like the echo of a song that will soon return in deeper tone. The valley lies ahead, dim and slow to wake. Mist clings to the low stones, and the air grows thick with the scent of earth. The shepherd does not turn aside. He lifts his staff, and the flock follows, their breath rising in small clouds that drift and vanish. The teacher's voice, gentle but unbroken, carries the psalm forward. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. The crowd hearing him leans inward, for these are words they know, but never as they hear them now, not as ritual, but as heartbeat. The teacher speaks them like light kindling in darkness, and the valley in their minds begins to move. It is not a place of finality, but of passage. The shepherd leads, sure and calm. Shadows stretch long, shaping the path into half-light. The sheep stay close. Their bleating softens until it becomes one sound, steady, trusting. The teacher says, the shadow is not the death itself, but the remembrance of it, the hint that life must lean on something stronger than breath. The valley walls rise steep on either side. Rocks hang close above the trail, and the echo of each step returns like the whisper of memory. The shepherd walks ahead, his staff tapping softly, and with every touch, the ground feels safer. He does not rush them, for haste in such places would scatter hearts. He moves slowly, like one who has walked this way before and knows it bends toward light. The teacher's words flow with that same patience. Thou art with me, he repeats, and pauses on each word until they seem to glow. The people breathe in time with that phrase, as though it alone were enough to walk by. No promise of escape, no bargain for ease, only presence. The shepherd's nearness is the answer to the valley's question. He speaks of the rod and the staff. The rod gleams faintly in the dim. It is strength, protection, justice. The staff curves like a question answered, its hook ready to draw the faltering near. Together, they are both firmness and grace, correction that comforts, not wounds. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me, the teacher says, and the crowd feels it. The miracle that strength can soothe, that guidance can embrace. Some among them think of their own valleys, sickness, loss, fear that names no cause. Yet in the rhythm of his voice, those valleys seem no longer like prisons, but like corridors watched by unseen light. The shepherd steps before them, become the map of their endurance. He continues, to walk through is the promise, not to stay, not to fall, but to pass through. The listener's eyes lift at that word through. It opens the valley before them, not as a grave, but as a gate. The shepherd pauses midway along the dark trail. The flock draws close. The wind sighs low between the cliffs, carrying the faint scent of water ahead. He looks back, not to measure distance, but to assure them with his gaze. His eyes hold the calm of stars, reflected in deep water. The sheep, seeing that calm, rest even in their movement. The teacher lets this image linger. He says, the presence of the shepherd does not make the valley less deep, but it makes the darkness less feared. For fear is not the absence of light, it is the forgetting of who walks beside. A woman in the crowd, long bowed by grief, lifts her head for the first time. The air seems clearer, though the sun has not risen higher. In the hush between sentences, the people hear the sound of their own breathing, steady, alive. Enough. The shepherd moves again. The valley widens. The shadow thins. The sheep begin to see the shimmer of open ground beyond the last bend. The teacher's tone lightens with them. He brings them out as he brought them in, by faith, not sight, by step, not leap. They come at last to the edge of the dark. The sun lies low, pouring gold across the mouth of the ravine. The shepherd turns and looks once more behind him. None are missing. The rod gleams like morning. The staff rests easily in his hand. He leads them upward into the light. The teacher's voice softens to near silence. And when he brings them out, they know him not by sight alone, but by the nearness that did not depart. The people hold that thought as something living, a truth that does not end when words do. In every valley that memory will come to them, thou art with me. The phrase becomes a shelter large enough for all the world's shadows, and when he stops speaking, the silence he leaves is not empty. It is filled with footsteps continuing beyond the telling, the sound of the flock still moving forward, the shepherd's presence still guiding, the valley itself transformed from fear to faith. The teacher looks to the horizon where light gathers. The next lines of the psalm wait there, promise of table, of oil, of overflowing joy. But for a moment, he lets the people stay here, where shadow meets dawn. It is enough to know they are not alone. They have come out of the valley, and the light lies wide before them, like a promise fulfilled. The shepherd pauses upon a gentle rise, and the flock gathers near, their flanks warm with the first strength of sun. The teacher lets the psalm rise again upon his breath. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. And with these words, the scene opens into a new kind of mercy. Not merely safety after shadow, but celebration within sight of all that once threatened. The shepherd leads them to a sheltered place where the grass runs thick and tender. Stones ring the spot like a simple altar. A small spring threads through the center, clear as peace. He sets his staff down and kneels, as one who serves before he commands. The flock watches, their ears turning, their bodies relaxing into the nearness of his care. Around them, the country still holds traces of the valley's adversaries. Narrow ledges, thorned hedges, distant clefts where wolves might lurk. Yet here, a table is laid. The teacher's voice gathers the image with reverence. He prepares, he says, lingering on the verb, as though touching holy cloth. The preparation is exact, thoughtful, loving. The shepherd checks the ground for burr and briar. He pulls what might prick, smooths what might bruise. He draws water from the spring, letting it settle in a shallow hollow, so even the least can drink without fear. With steady hands, he scatters salt upon the meadow's edge to draw out whatever bitterness the soil might conceal. Nothing careless, nothing hurried. Love sets the table with wisdom learned in every weather. A fragrance rises, crushed herbs underfoot, the cool sweetness of water. The sheep nose the grass and begin to feed, not in panic, but in praise. For even eating can be worship when the one who gives is near. The teacher allows the people to feel the paradox. Enemies not banished, yet power emptied. Dangers not vanished, yet their edge blunted by a feast of presence. This is not escape. It is victory that knows how to live where fear once ruled. Before me, he repeats, in the presence of my enemies. The words do not boast, they bless. The table is not an insult to grief or a mockery of pain. It is the balm set within sight of sorrow to declare that sorrow will not be king. The shepherd's quiet service answers every accusation the valley could speak. Here is bread, here is water, here is rest, and here, the giver himself. Now, the anointing. The shepherd moves among the flock with a small vessel of oil. He takes each head gently, rubbing the fragrant balm along the crown and around the tender places where flies torment and skin splits. The oil gleams like sunlight, caught and poured. It cools, it heals, it protects. Lambs lean into his touch. The older sheep close their eyes and breathe more slowly. He does not skip the smallest or the least. The hand that sought the one now blesses all. The teacher's tone softens until it is hardly more than a breath. Thou anointest my head with oil. The words carry the weight of welcome, the joy of belonging. Anointing is honor, but also tenderness, a sign that the shepherd delights in the ones he keeps. It is priestly and personal at once, a sacrament without crowd or trumpet, performed in the quiet, where only love needs to know. The people feel upon their own brows that imagined coolness. Something within them loosens, as if long-held care slips from the shoulders. He lifts then a cup. In the telling it is more gesture than object, yet the gesture brims with life. My cup runneth over, the teacher says, and the phrase itself spills like water beyond the lip of speech. The cup is not measured to the day, but to the giver. Abundance answers existence with more than enough. The shepherd pours and does not count. He pours until the earth drinks, until the fragrance of joy carries on the air, until gratitude becomes the only honest language left. Some in the crowd smile through tears. Overflow is not excess for pride. It is the generosity of a heart that cannot be spent. The cup runs over because the hand that pours has no fear of want. There is always more where mercy comes from. There is always enough for the next dark, the next dawn, the next weary traveler who stumbles to the feast. Around the meadow's rim, the old adversaries keep their distance. They see the table, they smell the oil, they hear the low, contented murmur of a flock at rest, and they cannot cross the boundary laid by love. The teacher does not name them, for their names matter less than the presence. It is enough to say they watch, and watching, they learn their limits. The shepherd returns to his place and sits among the sheep. Some lie against his feet. One rests its muzzle upon his knee. The spring chatters softly. Birds take courage and light upon the surrounding stones. The landscape that once threatened now becomes congregation, gathered to witness the liturgy of trust. The teacher lets the moment linger, that the people might understand. Peace is not the absence of enemies. It is the nearness of the shepherd who feeds his own within their sight. Then he speaks of memory. The one that was lost eats here too. And at that sentence, the parable and the psalm embrace. The lamb once carried, now grazes without fear, its scars cooled with oil, its thirst met from the overflowing cup. Finding has become fellowship. Rescue has ripened into communion. What began in cry proceeds now as song. Not loud, not hurried, but deep. The kind of singing the heart does without sound. The teacher lowers his gaze and almost whispers, "This is how love reigns. Not with iron, but with bread. Not with terror, but with touch." He does not deny that valleys return or that nights can be long. He simply lets the table stand within the day, like a promise placed in the earth. When the shadow lengthens, remembrance will taste like bread. When fear approaches, the brow will still carry the scent of oil. He gathers the words again. Table, enemies, oil, cup. Each is a door into the same room, the shepherd's presence. Each teaches the same lesson with different music. You are not merely spared, you are honored, healed, filled. The sun climbs. The flock dozes and feeds by turns. The shepherd watches, unhurried. He seems to listen to something the earth is singing, a quiet hymn the soil knows when it rests beneath a faithful sky. And those who listen to the teacher find that their own hearts join that hymn, a slow, grateful cadence that steadies the spirit for all that remains. When at last he lifts his head, the next line waits like a gentle tide, returning. It draws near, not with thunder, but with certainty. Goodness and mercy shall follow. The feast has taught them how to expect it. The oil has marked them to receive it. The overflowing cup has trained their hands to hold without fear. The path continues, and a new companionship will attend their steps. The teacher lets the meadow fall quiet in their minds, as if sealing the room before they rise. Bread remains. Oil glistens upon wool. The cup still spills its brightness into the grass. Enemies keep their distance, not banished but outsung. And the shepherd, unwearied, stands once more, his shadow falling long and kind across the feast he set. Thus the table becomes a threshold as well as a rest. What was given here will walk with them. What overflowed here will flow again. And the flock, fed and anointed, will soon learn to name the two companions, already moving in the edges of the light. The sun slopes westward, and the meadow glows with the calm of late light. The flock moves slowly now, filled and content, their shadows long and unhurried upon the grass. The teacher's voice follows the turning of that light, soft yet sure. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. The people hear the certainty in surely, not hope only, but promise. Goodness and mercy are not fragile things that visit and depart. They are companions, constant as breath, faithful as the shepherd himself. The teacher speaks of them not as ideas, but as presence. Two gentle figures walking behind the flock, steady as their guide who walks before. Goodness moves first, the hand of provision, the quiet ordering of things for the soul's welfare. It fills what is empty, heals what is wounded, turns even weariness toward rest. It is in the grass that renews beneath their feet, in the well that does not run dry, in the sunlight that finds them even when they wander into shadow again. Goodness is the face of love when the path is clear. Mercy follows beside it, slower perhaps, but deeper. Where goodness gives, mercy forgives. Where goodness fills, mercy restores. It walks softly where the heart has stumbled, gathering the remnants of regret as a shepherd gathers wool caught on thorn. The teacher's words breathe the rhythm of that companionship. Surely goodness, surely mercy, not one without the other, not one day and not the next, but all the days, the bright ones, the dim ones, the ordinary and the holy alike. The shepherd leads still, but now the flock begins to understand the fullness of his care. He is before them, calling. Goodness and mercy are behind them, keeping. Between those presences, they walk safely through the whole terrain of living. It is not only that he goes before, the teacher says, but that his love circles all around. A quietness rests upon the crowd. They picture those twin mercies following, unseen yet unfailing, through every season. When strength fades, goodness steadies. When heart falters, mercy bends low. Together, they are the shadow of the shepherd's smile, moving wherever his name is spoken. The teacher's eyes lift toward the far horizon. The air seems full of dust that glows like gold. All the days of my life, he says again, and each word finds its echo in the hearts listening. Life's days, not some of them, not only those crowned with triumph, but all. The weary days, the lost days, the quiet ones that slip by unnoticed. None fall outside the circle of the shepherd's keeping. He speaks then of remembrance. When the soul looks back upon its path, he says, it will see not only its own footprints, but also the goodness that steadied each step and the mercy that lifted it when it fell. The people nod, for many have known what it is to be carried when they thought themselves walking alone. The shepherd in the story begins to move again, gathering the flock for evening. The long grass whispers underfoot. The sky has taken on the color of wine. Behind him, the field glows, marked by the gentleness of all that is past, table, oil, cup. Ahead, the trail curves toward home, and still the two companions follow. Goodness on one side, mercy on the other, their pace eternal, their patience unending. The teacher lets the image widen. These are not mere attendants of comfort, he says. They are the very nature of the shepherd himself, moving wherever he moves. To say surely is to rest in that nature, to trust that nothing can change what has already been promised in his heart. As he speaks, evening begins to settle over the people listening. The first cool breeze stirs, carrying the scent of fig and earth. Someone lights a small lamp at the edge of the crowd, and its glow trembles like faith itself. Small, but enduring. The teacher's words wrap around that moment, tender as a cloak. He who began the journey with you will not depart before its end. Goodness shall guard your path. Mercy shall guard your soul. A hush follows, soft and complete. They do not want the telling to end, yet they feel that the story is drawing them toward its home, the fold that does not close at dusk, the dwelling that no night can threaten. The teacher lifts his hand gently, tracing an unseen line from earth to heaven. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The words wait still, poised like the horizon itself, and he lets them rest there for now. For the heart must be quieted before it can hear eternity. The last of the sun slips behind the hills. The flock in the story settles at the shepherd's feet. The flock listening does the same, hearts bowed beneath a peace too vast to name. The teacher lowers his eyes, and in that silence, goodness and mercy keep watch behind them all. The teacher's voice turns to the final words, quiet as the coming of night. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The sound of it moves through the crowd, like a breath released, like the long exhale after a day of walking. The people who have followed every image, the lost sheep, the still waters, the valley and the table, now understand that the journey has never been about distance, but about belonging. The shepherd leads his flock homeward. The hills grow dim, and the first stars open above the ridge. Their light is cool and tender, like eyes that have seen much and judge nothing. The shepherd's staff gleams as he walks. His shadow stretches before him, falling over the gate of the fold. One by one the sheep pass through, the sound of their hooves soft against the packed earth. He counts them quietly, not out of doubt, but devotion. Each number is a word of love. Each name is a memory kept. The teacher lets the scene unfold slowly, as though time itself must bow to the peace of this return. The house of the Lord, he says, is not built by hands. It is wherever his presence abides. The people nod, for they see it now, that the shepherd's house is not far away in the clouds, but near, around, within, the place where mercy rests and love endures. He continues, Forever does not mean only the ages to come. It begins even now, when the soul at last is home. The words move through the listeners like the turning of wind through olive leaves, soft, continuous, familiar. They know what it means to dwell, not to visit, not to wander, but to stay. The shepherd, in the telling, closes the gate and stands within the fold. The flock settles in the quiet. The night spreads like velvet, yet there is no fear in it. His staff leans against the entrance. His eyes sweep over the resting forms. A lamb stirs, dreaming. The shepherd hums softly, a song without words, a melody older than time. The teacher's own cadence mirrors that song, slow and steady, each syllable a footstep of peace. And I will dwell, he repeats, lingering on Ame, the personal vow of one who's been sought, found, and restored. Then upon will, the resolve that holds through all seasons. Then upon dwell, not pass through, not linger briefly, but remain. The people breathe those pauses, as if learning to pray with the rhythm of their hearts. The shepherd sits upon the low stone by the gate. Around him the sheep sleep, their breathing rising and falling like the sea in calm weather. Above them, the constellations wheel slowly, patient as eternity. Forever, the teacher says again, but softly now, almost within himself. Forever is the length of love and the measure of rest. He tells them that in the Father's house there are many rooms, meadows and streams without number, all within the same embrace. Everyone who was lost has a place prepared, not as a guest, but as kin. No wall there is too high for mercy to climb. No night there lingers where light cannot follow. The listeners close their eyes. Some see fields without horizon. Others feel only the quiet assurance that they will not be alone again. The teacher's words fold over them like a mantle, and within that stillness, their hearts echo his, I will dwell. In the story, dawn begins again. The shepherd rises, for morning always comes, even in heaven's telling. He opens the gate, and the flock moves out into the brightness. But this time, there is no fear of losing or being lost. The path, the water, the table, and the valley, all are within the same pasture now. Every direction leads toward him. Every step begins and ends in peace. The teacher opens his hands as if releasing something unseen. So the psalm ends, he says, yet it never finishes. For the song of the shepherd continues in every soul that remembers its home. The crowd remains quiet. No one wishes to move or speak. It seems that even the sea beyond the hill has stilled its breathing to listen. And then, as gently as it began, the voice of the teacher fades into silence, not departure, but rest. The evening air deepens. Lamps flicker in the distance, their glow soft and golden, like echoes of the shepherd's lamp upon the hills. The people rise slowly, carrying the peace of his words within them. None leave empty. Each bears a light, unseen but sure, to guide their own steps home. The teacher looks toward the horizon where the last light lingers. His face is calm, touched by that glow. For a long while, he stands without speech, watching the line where earth meets heaven. And then he turns, walking down among those who have heard, the quiet of his presence more eloquent than words. The fold of his story closes around them, and the night breathes peace. And so, the telling ends, as all things wholly end, not with finality, but with stillness. The shepherd's journey, through shadow and pasture, through searching and song, rests now within the heart that remembers. The lost are found, the weary restored, the fearful comforted. Goodness and mercy walk on, and the eternal house stands open for all who long for its peace. May every wanderer find the sound of that voice again, the voice that calls by name and never ceases. May every heart learn the quiet joy of being carried, of drinking from still waters, of dwelling at last in light that does not fade. The story has become a prayer, and the prayer has become a home.